Where are you going? And how do I know I'll make it there? What's it like over there? Is there a way you can tell me about it? Do people know me there? Have you seen my home? Am I viewed amongst the righteous or the wicked? What's real about what's around me right now? There's this world you're in and another world that simultaneously exists that you can't see, but it sees you. Allah, the angels, and other elements of the unseen are watching you. And the things you see around you are deeper than they look and can perhaps even perceive that realm better than you. And you're only one step away from it. It starts with a basic truth. Those we have buried are not actually dead. They've entered the Barzakh, a parallel existence where there are people right now that are just as alive as you. Some of them are watching green birds that were once in bodies of martyrs soar above them. Others are drowning in rivers of blood. Some are dwelling in beautiful homes among family members that have been dead for decades. Others are busy being devoured by beasts with many heads. So what is this realm? And what do we know about the people who reside in it? And what would knowing about that world do for us today to make sense of the world we live in right now? And what does it mean for us in our own individual journeys, trying to find our way back to Allah? Centuries ago, there was a soldier that wandered in the desert near Kufa in Iraq, and he was trying to find the city's center. And as he's wandering around looking for the city, he comes across one of the most famous scholars of his time, Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah, but he had no idea who he was. So he goes up to him and he asks him, "Are you a slave?" Ibrahim says, "Yes." He says, "Ayn al-Umran," which linguistically means, where are the city dwellings? Where is everyone at? So Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah said, "Follow me." And then he takes him to a graveyard. And the man said, "I asked you to take me to the city dwellings." Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah said, "It's right here." And he pointed to the graveyard again. So the man ends up striking him in the head and then dragging him to the actual city while the people come to him rushing saying, "What are you doing?" That's Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah. He said, "But I asked him if he was a slave," as if that would have made his action okay. So they said to Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah, "Oh, our teacher, why didn't you just tell him who you are?" He said, "Well, he asked me if I was a slave, but he didn't say to whom," meaning I'm a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, "Well, what did you say when he struck you?" He said, "I made dua for Allah to give him jannah." They said, "Why would you do that?" He said, "Because I knew I would be rewarded because of him, and I didn't want him to be punished because of me." They said, "Okay, but why did you take him to the graveyard in the first place? He asked you for al-Umran. He asked you where the city center was." And Ibrahim ibn Adham rahimahullah said, "I've noticed that when people move to their graves, they settle there. But no one ever comes back here from there." Meaning the graveyard is where the living actually are. They say that the secret to success is being one step ahead. For the pious predecessors, the secret was being one stop ahead. They were all ready for all spiritual, practical purposes, living in the next life. But what if we could walk up to the graves of our ancestors and just ask them to tell us what it's like for them now? In one narration from Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Prophet ﷺ said that there was a group from Bani Israel in the past that were traveling, and as they were traveling, they passed a cemetery. And when they get there, they say to each other, "Let's pray 2 rak'ahs and ask Allah to bring back some of these people so that they can tell us about death and they can tell us about life in the grave." So they all pray 2 rak'ahs and then they made dua to Allah. And right after that, this man rises from the grave, shaking the dust off, and he says, "Oh people, you sought nothing but this? I died 100 years ago, and the heat of the moment of my death has not yet cooled down. So can you ask Allah to return me to the state that I was in before?" The thing is, we don't need the dead to tell us how real death is and how we're all going to end up in the Barzakh someday.